but this isn't the most scenic part of town here. So I'm just keeping it trained on myself this time. So this particular installment won't have very much to do with the subject of how to be more awesome. This is just another of my just kind of personal rants. A subject that is very dear to me, not just in my capacity of running Butte Halloween, but in the capacity of being from Butte in general, and something that's fascinating to a lot of people throughout the centuries. I'm here today to talk to you about ghosts. A lot of the time, people get asked, do you believe in ghosts? It's kind of a defining trait among people, whether you believe in ghosts or not. To me, the question is meaningless without context. By this I mean that if you want to know if I believe in ghosts or not, first you've got to tell me what the heck you're talking about. The word is meaningless in and of itself. Suppose that I were to ask you if you believed in some concept, but you didn't recognize the term. It was just some nonsense term. If I said, do you believe in existential epistemology? Do you believe in that? Yes or no? Well, I don't know what in the world that means. That's a very vague term that can mean anything, and I believe ghosts are a similar thing. I believe, first of all, that ghosts are not and could not possibly be a single phenomenon. Ghosts are not a thing. Ghosts are not even a proper classification. I think that there are things that we know little enough about that our attempts to talk at them are just absolute twaddle. Compare this to taxonomists of antiquity, like taxonomists in like 500 AD, in pre-Aristotelian times. There were naturalists who would speak of birds and bats in the same sentence as if they were part of the same species because they both had wings. Well, that's not how we classify things now. We have better ways of doing it now. We have terms like mammal and arthropod, all these technical terms to properly classify life forms. Okay, and you could find places where people would believe things to be alive that weren't and not alive that were. It was only very recently that we found out that yeast was a life form and not a chemical. You could just as easily find people who believed that fire was a living thing, or that water had some sort of life in it in antiquity. I think that mankind is always overreaching his grasp, and in fact that's what makes him wonderful. That's what makes mankind such a spectacular thing, is that we are always trying to be something more and succeeding. I mean, look at this, cars and roads, cities, all kinds of things that don't occur in nature. And that's just pretty mind-boggling. I had to talk about that earlier. Concrete. That's amazing stuff right there. But I don't have time to talk about everything that I meet along the road here. I'm talking about ghosts. Or rather, I'm not, because I don't know what it means. By ghost, people mean a whole multitude of phenomena, some understood and some not. Okay? And even those understood, of course, they're not very well understood, or they probably wouldn't go under that classification in the first place. So, when you ask me, do I believe in ghosts? Well, do I believe in spirits? Obviously, the answer to that is yes. I'm a religious man. I believe that I am imbued with an immortal soul. I believe in angels and demons and such like. I think that our knowledge of the celestial realms may not be completed. There may be other things out there than what we would classically define as angels or devils, and I think that these other theoretical things, if they exist, would account for a lot of what are classically termed fairies. So I do believe in spirits. Do I believe in poltergeists? Yes I do, but I want to stress that I do not believe poltergeists are alive. I believe poltergeists are a psychic effect, and an exceedingly rare one at that. Something almost never encountered but it is somehow the result of all sorts of muddled psychic energies, whatever that means. That's a very vague term there too, and I kind of have to apologize for even using it. But when you get a lot of emotion and muddled determination all concentrated in one spot, very rarely you will see, I believe, a poltergeist. I do not believe this to be a personal spirit. That is, I do not believe it has personality. I don't think a poltergeist has awareness or knows what it's doing. I also believe that there can be demonic poltergeists. That is to say that a demon could, if it were allowed, throw a whole bunch of stuff around and in fact look almost exactly like a poltergeist, but with malicious intent. That would be a personal poltergeist, and that would come from a demon. Again, I think this is opinion. I could be wrong about this, and if I found out I was, it wouldn't break my heart at all. It wouldn't break my heart to find out there's no such thing as poltergeists, for that matter. Do I believe in psychic impressions? To a certain extent. I believe that some places do have a lived-in feel, and some places do have a cold and empty feel. I believe that some places have good energy and bad energy. I have felt that, and I have felt it far too strongly to deny that it exists. However, I have not found it to be as static as people say. I very seldom find a drawing room which is always bad, or a pendant that always has good energy in it. I find that it's more transient than that. I find pockets of good juju and bad juju, and they tend to move around a bit. They tend to not be localized. What I think the word ghost properly means, I'm not going to get into etymology or other people's definitions or any of that, but ghosts, the things that ghost hunters are looking for with their EMP thingies and their temperature thingies and their really bad data gathering thingies, those things I think are the result of human perception. I think they're kind of like rainbows. And some of you probably just ejected from the train of thought there, but yeah, I think ghosts are like rainbows. A rainbow doesn't actually exist as an empirical thing. There's no point out there in space where there's a rainbow in the sky, although it looks that way to us. The rainbow would not be there if it weren't for our point of view. When polarized light all coming from the same direction, like from the sun, hits a randomized field of prisms, that's a field of water droplets, like a cloud or a sprinkler, the light gets scattered all different directions. But there will be a certain point of view from which the red light will be most readily visible, the green light will be most readily visible, and the blue light will be most readily visible. And thus, from your point of view, from where your eye is, you will perceive red to be around in this circle here and blue to be around in that circle there. But if you move your eye, that rainbow will move in relation to your eye. So the way that I think the ghosts are like rainbows is simply that I think we as human beings react to certain phenomena. Some of these not at all understood, some of these very well understood actually. There's some very well understood principles behind ghosts that actually I would like to someday incorporate into a haunted hotel, but that's a story for later. The point is, I think that what we term ghosts seems similar to us, but they're not actually. It's like if I were to ask you what glisten is. What is it made of? How do you isolate glisten? Where does glisten come from? Well, lots of things glisten. Frogs glisten, and water glistens, and glass glistens, and ruby glistens. But those things are all not the same thing. They're not even similar in their essence. They are similar only in what would classically be called their accidents, the way we perceive them, the attributes of them. Glisten is not a simple concept at all. As we well know, glisten is a combination of reflectiveness, movement, and lighting conditions. Those three things coming together when perceived by a human eye, and that's an important point, when perceived by us, make up an effect that we call glistening. I could go on comparing, literature or moods or all kinds of things. But the point is, I don't think that ghosts are out there in the world. I think that ghosts are what we call the things that we see and don't entirely understand. That being said, I do believe in hauntings. Despite what I said about things being transient, I do find that there are places that have more of these feelings than others. I still stand by what I said, that I don't find a haunted drawing room which has a sense of dread in it. But I have found houses that more often than other houses have senses of dread on occasion, or senses of glee, or these mood swings. I think there are houses that have more of whatever this stuff is. I'll call it energy, although this is very poor science on my part. Some places have more of this psychic energy than others. Those places could, I think, be accurately termed haunted, regardless of your view on what ghosts are.